Okay, so there's a ton to talk about. Spoilers. This is a review that has spoilers. So be advised, spoilers. If you haven't seen the movie, watch my other video. The other video has no spoilers. This one is going to be thick with spoilers. So much to talk about. So much. Great movie. Captain America Civil War. Essentially Captain America Part 3. This one was great. Chris Evans, Captain America. Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. Scarlett Johansson as the Scarlet Witch. Sebastian Stan as the Winter Soldier. I mean, it's thick with superheroes and thick with actors, but it didn't seem thick. You know, it was done well. Everybody is giving the Russo brothers a great big pat on the back for being able to handle so many people and not have it seem crowded. And I guess, you know what? I gotta be on that exact same bandwagon because they did well. Anthony Mackie as the Falcon. Don Cheadle as War Machine. We had Jeremy Renner as Hawkeye. You know, in the comic books, he was always one of my favorite characters. Chadwick Boseman as the Black Panther. His body of work is just, it's small, but it's becoming more and more impressive. He's going from all the way left to all the way right to a completely different person and he nails the African accent, I think. I've never met that many Africans, but he nailed what I hear on television for an African accent. He nailed it. Paul Bettany as the Vision. Elizabeth Olsen as the Scarlet Witch. I didn't realize at first that she was actually the sister, she's a sibling of the Olsen twins. I don't know why it didn't register, but it didn't. Now I know. And knowing's half the battle. Paul Rudd is Ant-Man. And Tom Holland, of course, as Spider-Man. I think the youngest and the best Spider-Man so far. He captures the whole essence of what Spider-Man is. You know, Spider-Man is started out as a young kid from Queens. So he's got the accent, the awkwardness. He's not that snarky at first, not like the previous Spider-Man who just started out with the whole full swing Spider-Man. You can tell he's just becoming Spider-Man. In fact, spoilers, in fact, he even says, I've only been doing this for 6 months. So, you know, he's new at it. But he's like full-on super-powered Spider-Man, catches a car 40 miles an hour and just stands there and just boom, catches it and then throws it. I used to be able to do that when I was younger. Not. So, essentially what happens, you've got the government, of course, wants to put the Avengers in check, and it's because of the massive billions of dollars of destruction that have come in the wake of their fights and the freaking incredible amount of lives that have actually been lost. I mean, you know, think about it, when people are fighting and buildings are falling, you know, in the cartoons or in the comic books, they don't really talk that much about the people that are in those buildings, but they touch on it here, and that's essential. They're like, hey, you know, you guys are killing people, you know, whether it's your fault or not, you know, you're going around doing these things that's causing destruction, mayhem, and death. So somebody's got to get a rein on you guys. So the UN's decided that they're going to, you know, put sanctions on the Avengers. And of course, Captain America has the, you know, he's like, no, man, we're not doing that. You know, nobody's going to control us. You know, the reason we can stop these people is because we're not under any particular control. If we need to go someplace and you say no, then that's wrong. And if you send us someplace that we don't think we should go to do something we don't think we should be doing, then that's wrong. We'll be forced to do it. So, no. And then Iron Man, who, spoilers, Iron Man is approached by a woman whose son has a promising career and a promising life. And, you know, Iron Man is confronted by this woman, or Tony Stark is. And she's like, you know, my son was this, he was that, he was a great kid. Unfortunately, we'll never be able to know exactly how great because you killed him. Now, who's going to avenge him? Avenger? So, that, you know, I mean, you've seen the movies. Iron Man is on his Batman thing where everything that happens affects him deeply, right down to his soul. So he's like, oh man, wow, we're responsible for that, man. Somebody's got to get control of us. And to me personally, it kind of seemed like he just wanted to be able to pass the buck a little bit, you know. So if the government's in charge and they do something, they'll be like, you know, they did it. They told us to go over there. It's them. But he's affected. So he wants to go for it. He's like, yeah, man, we should have somebody in control of us. And it should be the UN. That sounds good. So he's all for it. And of course that causes a split. And there's a ton of matchups. There's not just Cap versus Iron Man, and there's not just the Black Panther versus the Winter Soldier. I mean, of course they advertise that, but there's so much more. I mean, you've got Cap fights the Panther fights the Winter Soldier, Ant-Man fights the Black Widow, which doesn't sound like a matchup, but that was kind of funny. That was a hilarious fight. Hawkeye fights the Vision. Can anybody say mismatch? So the Vision in turn has to then fight the Scarlet Witch. And when you see him fighting the Scarlet Witch, in the comic books, her powers are not just telekinesis. She can do considerably more than just making things move. She actually alters reality. And I think that that's going to come in play in the future movies, because when she's fighting the Vision, spoiler, get ready, when she's fighting the Vision, she's like, she doesn't just, you know, she's not really altering him telekinetically, because he's got Hawkeye, and it looks like he's thinking about choking him out. And all of a sudden he becomes intangible, which means he, you know, things can pass through him. So Hawkeye just kind of moves away from him. So she's controlling his powers. She doesn't just make his arms move and he's like not holding him anymore. She forces him to become intangible. So he's, you know, he's like the wind, and Hawkeye just kind of walks through him. And then she changes him from that to crunching him down and forcing him, because these are the Vision's powers. He can become intangible, he can walk through walls, and then he can become as hard as diamond and as heavy as, you know, 10 tons or whatever. He just becomes really, really dense, or really, really non-dense. So she makes him non-dense, intangible, and Hawkeye is free. And then she changes his power and makes him do his thing where he's heavy and he can't control it. He's all crunched up and everything and he can't control it. He's like, no, Wanda, don't do it. And she forces him to get heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier. And then he just drops through like 10 floors. I'm almost positive this is Avengers Complex. I mean, it shows Avengers Mansion, but, you know, Avengers Complex. It shows the A on the building. Everybody's in there chilling out. drinking coffee and whatever. So he drops through like 10 floors of their building to wherever. And he must be stuck there because they walk out of the building and he doesn't follow them. So he's stuck there for a while, I imagine. So I'm watching the movie and I'm like, okay, well she's got her powers to warp reality now, or at least she's starting to get them, which is going to be needed because if they're going to fight Thanos, and Thanos has that gauntlet with all of the Infinity Stones in it, then one of them is in the Vision's head. So he's going to have to snatch that puppy out at some point. And if he does that, either the Vision's going to be dead, or maybe her altering powers affects the Vision, which I think happens because later on in the movie, he shows emotion. And I'm thinking, is it because of the stone? Or is it because of her, doing her hoodoo, voodoo stuff on him? I think it's the hoodoo, voodoo because the stone is eventually going to go to Thanos. It's got to. In order for him to make his gauntlet work, his glove with all that power, he needs all the stones. And since one of them's in your boy's forehead, he's got to take it at some point. So, it's got to be how it is. You're also going to get Spider-Man versus Cap, which is a good fight because they complement each other kind of on where they're from. Cap asks Spider-Man where he's from, and he's like, Queens. And Cap goes, Brooklyn. It's kind of like an acknowledgement. We're both from New York, kids from New York. I'm sorry I got to put this whooping on you, but I'm not going to say who won, but they fought. It was a great fight. Spider-Man fights the Winter Soldier and the Falcon at the same time, and that was funny and cool. That was a good fight. And there's a crap ton more. All of the plots from the previous movies are woven into this movie swell. I mean, it was like, you know what it's like? It's like the comics. Because you've got the comics and you've got a big event like the Infinity War, Infinity Gauntlet. You've got one of those, one of those big events, and something's happening in this book, and something's happening in that book, and something's happening in this book. And they all weave together and they mesh perfectly. And this movie captures that. And it does it, I'm thinking it does it a lot with the Russo brothers, but I'm thinking it does it a lot because they paid a lot of attention to the comics. And this is what happens in the comics. Everything meshes together. It makes sense. You get a storyboard, you write it all out in the beginning, man, and you're like, okay, A is going to go to B. B is going to go to C. Then C, surprisingly, will go to D. And it makes sense. And unfortunately, with the other guys, the DC properties, they didn't actually capture that yet. I mean, Marvel is giving the heroes their uniforms, and Marvel is giving the heroes essentially what their powers are, and Marvel is giving them their personalities from the books. The books are uber famous and uber popular for a reason. People dig them. I dig them. And so they're copying the books people. They're copying that persona, they're putting it on screen, and they're matching it great with the personalities and the powers and the costumes and the abilities of the books. DC hasn't actually captured that yet. Superman doesn't have the confidence that he has in the books. Batman is straight up slaughtering people. I almost figured it's like one of their the New 52. Maybe it's a different Justice League, and maybe they're not as great because they're different, and the other Justice League is going to show up later or something like that. I don't know, but they haven't captured what Marvel's captured. Marvel is doing it perfectly. Thunderbolt Ross from the Incredible Hulk series is in here. He was in the first two movies, and he's the Secretary of State. When a rampaging powerhouse like the Hulk is tearing through a city, most people run, but Colonel Thunderbolt Ross charges at him. He's always throwing tanks and bullets and men at the Hulk because that's his thing. He will chase you down, and he will make sure he gets what he wants. He doesn't actually beat the Hulk, but every time he gets knocked down, he gets back up. So he's now assigned to the Avengers. Hulk's gone. Nobody knows where Hulk's at. But they've got Ross, and they need to use him. So they're like, you know what, stick him on the Avengers. So that's essentially what they did. They put Ross on the Avengers, and he's looking to put his foot on their throat. And Captain America sees that. And Iron Man sees it as, you know, well, we're colleagues. He's my road dog. Not so much. It takes a while, but Iron Man eventually gets that. They start the romance. There's the romance between the Vision and the Scarlet Witch. Those two in the comics are a couple. So that romance has started. It's slight, but if you pay attention, you'll see it. Little things. They spend a little time together. You know, at the end, he's protective of her the whole nine. Even though she, you know, she dogged him. She gave him the business, but he still digs her. You know, you can see that. There's emotion there. He feels emotion, and he didn't think he could, but he's feeling it. So that's kind of a cool thing, because in the books, the reason that they can date, marry, and in the comic books have children is because of her hoodoo. She puts the moves on him with her magic, and now he's like, you know, he's Pinocchio. He's a real boy. So, and I guess since they had kids, he is a real boy. But you know, that's another story. But anyway, so they have kids. So here you see that they're starting to dig each other. Also, you had Mary Jane and Spider-Man, and you've got Lois Lane and Superman. One of it's a while ago, like the 80s, 90s, something like that. One of the other comic book big romances was Carter and Cap, you know, and they were dating. And when they showed her in the movie, The Winter Soldier, I was like, oh wow, they're gonna start dating. She's across the hallway, man. This is the chick that's across the hallway. I'm supposed to keep tabs on you. You know, he assigned me to watch you. That girl, you know, the cute blonde chick, yeah, in the comics, you know, she's dating Cap. So now looks like they're gonna start dating in the movies. That is a great thing. Marvel's getting really good at hallway fights. You know, they're fighting in the hallways, and it's great because in the Daredevil series on Netflix, all of his best fights are in a hallway for some reason. And now one of the best fights in this movie is in a hallway. Cap and the Winter Soldier kind of sort of fighting each other, kind of sort of just trying to leave the building because the UN troops are there trying to catch the Winter Soldier, and Cap doesn't want that to happen. So they're kind of fighting each other, kind of fighting the troops. You know, Cap's trying to stop him from killing anybody, and you know, it's a good fight. Man, that was a great fight. The whole movie was filled with great fights, but of course, the best one was the airport fight. The airport battle was monumentous. Now, prepare yourself, because this is spoilers. This one's a big one. Biggest spoiler of the movie. The Cap and his team need to escape, and they need for somebody to segue the battle into a different direction so that they can get away. And Ant-Man's like, there's this thing I can do. Well, I did it. Do it all the time. No, I did it once. I passed out, but I'm pretty sure I can do it. And I'm thinking, is he going to do the thing where... And he does it. He becomes Giant Man. And that blew me away. I was like, freaking Giant Man's in the movie. And he didn't look goofy or crazy or whatever. You know, it was clearly... It had to be CGI. I mean, it didn't have a giant dude there. But it looked swell. And that was a good fight. And only to be followed by the fight at the end when Cap and the Winter Soldier and the Panther's there, but they don't know it. They never really know he's there. And Iron Man all get together and they decide, we're going to be friends again, man. And they get together and they decide to face off against the true villain. And he gives them some information that forces them to fight one another. And this is the big fight. This is the big Cap versus Iron Man fight. In Superman versus Batman, you never really get Superman versus Batman. You're sitting there for 16 hours and you get 2.5 minutes of Batman versus Superman. And then a whole bunch of other stuff happens. But in this movie, you get a ton of fights. Cap and Iron Man are at each other's throats basically through the whole movie. And they fight at the airport. But they fight at the end. It's almost is he going to kill him? It's almost that kind of a fight. That dude's going to kill that dude. It's that kind of a fight. But Bucky's there too. Bucky. They call him Bucky. That's his nickname. But the Winter Soldier is there too. And he's fighting. And something happens that makes Iron Man, honest to God, want to kill the Winter Soldier. If I was in a situation and I saw what happened, you know what? It's a spoiler. I'm going to tell you. The Winter Soldier, it turns out that he is the one that killed Tony Stark's family. His mother and his father. And he beats his father's head in. He crushes his skull. And it's him. It's not like a robot or something. It's the Winter Soldier. And then he chokes out his mother. You choked my mom. You put your hands on my mom. And I got an Iron Man suit. I'm going to shoot you in the face. So that's what he tries to do. He tries to kill him a lot. But that's the catalyst. That's the end sort of the whole thing. I said before that there was only going to be one Easter egg. There are, in fact, 2. I didn't stay long enough. There's 2 Easter eggs. Stay for the whole thing. Trust me, there's 2. They're both worth it. Check them out. And I think that's all I'm going to say about that. So if you like the video, as always, subscribe right here and hit like. Or don't.